Glass-Steagall. I'm a local volunteer with the LaRouche movement here in Arizona. I've been involved in the LaRouche movement for about 40 years. Previously,
Speak up, Dennis.
Previously, I've worked with or investigated a lot of the different groups, different constitutional groups, the different patriot groups, the different Restore America groups, Return to the Republic groups. And I was also involved with the group that studied the mortgage crisis. It was with a group of 6 or 7 paralegals, and I tell people I'm a recovering CPA. So I was just giving my perspective of that from a CPA. And I came to my understanding was these legal methods, these other ones don't work. None of them seem to ever work. They seem to always, it's like people hack into them and they figure out what they did to hack into them and then they stop them. And there's really no fix. And the fix that I've come to the conclusion of has to be a political fix. What's broke, and we know what's broke in our Constitution. As to our Constitution, it's always who controls the gold, who controls the means of exchange. And what has happened with our Constitution is that the banks have taken what is, I define as the birthright of the American people, and we have this birthright controlled by what we consider our traditional enemy. I think that our Revolutionary Wars never ended. It went from the battlefield of Wall Street and playing a pox on our economic system from we should have run the Tory out, put them out in the ship without sails and oars and see if they can make it back to England. But that didn't happen. So what we have to do now is the inaction that have taken place in our nation since 1933 when we put the Glass-Steagall Act in, and then during the what I call the Clinton-Lewinsky administration when it was finally killed. And what we have today is Eric Thomas from our movement. He's a full-time organizer with the LaRouche movement out of California. He covers the western states. What I'm going to have is him come and he's going to do a presentation. After that, I'm going to have a couple of our local organizers explain what got them involved in the movement. Then ultimately, we want to encourage you to see the vision of what we're trying to do. For myself, my motivation is I have children and grandchildren. I imagine you all take a look at the way things are going. There's really no future. It's on a continual downslide. The economy is something that most people don't know how to understand it. But the way I've come to the conclusion is you measure the economy in terms of physical production. We're not making anything. We don't have an economy. I talked to politicians who said, we're a service-based economy. And I said, what? We're going to go around and sell life insurance policies to one another, and that's going to keep our economy going. What Wall Street has done is taken and sold to the American people that this casino operation that they have. Because if you look at, well, how does a casino work? A casino, it takes your money. I have a friend of mine who used to own the family liquor. They're putting that casino out there just to the east of it. And he went to school in economics. He says that casino does not contribute anything to the businesses that surround it. It's a black hole that people throw their money down. And that is what we have with the Wall Street operation we have. I have a sister who is apolitical. She just came down and visited me from the Salt Lake area about 3 weeks ago, and I asked her, I said, Kathleen, what does Wall Street contribute to our economy? And here's a novice. And she gave me an insightful explanation. She says, a few millionaires and a lot of paupers. You have to realize that Wall Street is a casino. And in a casino, who wins? The house wins. The house always wins. You know, everybody tries to place their bets. My background is when I was going to school, I worked for when I was going to ASU, I worked for a brokerage firm called Young Smith & Peacock. And some of you might know who that was. And I worked in the back office. And so I could see what was going on in the trader's desk and how they made markets and stuff, and different things like that. But the one thing I got out of that experience is when you're in the stock market, you're betting upon other people's expectations. That price of that stock that somebody's selling you has nothing to do with the underlying values, the physical values of that stock. So that's just something I want you to think about. The other thing is you have to think about where's value? You know, you've been taught value is where? Value a piece of gold, value a piece of silver, value a piece of wood, a piece of paper. When these friends of mine say, oh, I've got my gold, I got my silver coins, I tell them, to me, gold, silver, paper, rock, they're all fiat currencies. You know, I know somebody that's got a process that can make gold worthless if it ever got in the market. You know, they can take all the micronized gold and have, you know, so much gold left, that gold that you got is, you know, there's plenty of it. But those are the kind of things that the powers that be want to suppress because they control that. Now, what I want you to do is listen to Eric and think about what do you value. What I look at it this way, you know, based upon my belief system, I believe that is the creativity of the human being. That you as an individual where value is created. Value is not created with a piece of gold or a piece of silver that somebody else is controlling. You can probably look at all those people who bought silver recently, look at what's happened to the price of silver. The price of silver has always been controlled. What's happened recently with silver, you can bet your bottom dollar that that's what's happened. Now, what we can say is, what do you value? What is in our Constitution? Our Constitution is that we put value in the creativity of the human being, and like I said before, in government credit is issued in accordance with the general welfare that creates a future for our posterity. And the last time anything like that was done was during when JFK did the space program. Now, one of the things he was trying to do before he was killed with the issuance of government credit was this North American Water and Power Authority, which was to take 20% of the water that goes wasted into the Arctic Ocean and bring it in a series of dams, reservoirs, tunnels, and storage systems all the way down from Alaska through Arizona and give some to Mexico, because water is a continental issue. It's not evenly distributed, and if his project had been done and be completed, we wouldn't have the immigration problem. Mexico would have an economy. We would have an economy. We would be growing food. Right now, we're not growing enough food to feed our own population. So I'm going to turn the time now over to Eric. When he has some time, we're going to have Jennifer and Maria explain what they did, what brought them into the movement. And I'm saying what brought me in was my things that sort of the light turned on to me and said, this makes sense. What, in my own belief system, what did God put into the Constitution? He put that, you know, all our rights come from God. And then he put this other little thing, value is in you, your children, and everything like that. It isn't in the filthy lucre that most of us, which our system currently works on. So I'll turn this over to Eric.
Is this making any difference to use this?
Just speak loud anyway.
Just speak loud anyway?
Just project.
All right. Should I hold on to this or can I put this down?
Put it down.
It's actually working? I don't want it down. Thank you, Dennis. I couldn't give it for myself.
I think on the question of value, because that really is one of the core questions in economics, you have to start, I think, exactly where Dennis placed it, which is economic systems are a reflection of the view of man and what man's role is in the universe. Currently, pretty much, I can guarantee everything that we have been taught in school, and I mean all of us here, is based on this conception that man is just an animal, that economic value is determined by scarcity, what the British had put forward under Adam Smith of buying cheap, selling dear, right? All monetary theory that you get through school, through universities, just become pervasive now is based on this notion of man being a beast. Therefore, it's all garbage. It's all wrong. The real American system, which the British attempted with their allies in the United States to extinguish from the United States and from the world, started from the premise that the key value, the key resource for mankind is not what you find underground, right? It's not gold, not silver, not iron, not oil, uranium, it's not water. But the fundamental resource of an economy is human creativity. What I mean by creativity is not just simple innovation. It's actual real insight and discovery of principle, of actually new physical principles that govern the universe, that allows man to leap to a completely new platform, almost evolve, if you will, to becoming a new species. Right? So if you think about man as being dependent upon wood as a source of fuel, cook your meals, heat your home, power, your machines, and then the leap that we went from wood to coal, right? Or from coal to petrochemical, or from that to nuclear. If you think about what man was capable of doing with the introduction of these new technologies that function on a new physical principle, it completely transformed the productivity, right, of society. It increased the energy flux density to a new order of magnitude. That subsequently led to a very rapid increase to population, to the carrying capacity of the earth to hold man. What I'll say is that because human creativity is unlimited, human population growth, therefore, is unlimited. There is no such thing as overpopulation. Never will be. That this was something that's an aberration that was pushed by the British Empire to justify their evil policies of genocide, whose primary intention was to extinguish this notion of man, to try to hold society down for them to dominate. And that today is the explicit policy of the British oligarchy, the British monarchy, the Saudi monarchy. The explicit policy today is to extinguish the greater part of humanity, right? To use this crisis as the vehicle to reducing the population down to something around 1 billion people or less. Destroy all nations so they can go back to their insane utopian ideal, which is just pure insanity. It's absolute, complete insanity. So we're in a crisis right now where really since the death of Roosevelt, but really accelerating with the assassination of Kennedy by the British, the United States has gone in a very rapid downward collapse. Because as Dennis brought up, what happened with Kennedy's assassination wasn't just the beginning of the end of the Apollo mission. Right? It wasn't just the beginning of the Vietnam War and the rock, sex, drug counterculture that came with the pumping of drugs into Vietnam and into the college campuses and the new philosophies. But what was pushed was the end of the industrial, the end of man's productivity, of the United States specifically being committed to productivity and constantly pushing these new evolutionary developments through advancement of science, of production, of our society. And what we got was the service economy, which was totally focused on what? Making money. Making money with money. And this is the context in which Lyndon LaRouche came onto the scene, was really around the time of Kennedy's assassination. Because what Mr. LaRouche saw, which most people at the time said, absolutely no way, because people here who lived at that time, during Kennedy's period, compared to now especially, things were relatively good. The economy was, we had industry then. We had the Apollo mission. And so, for a lot of people, there was no certain signs that we were going to be facing an impending doom. But LaRouche, he did recognize that the paradigm shift that took place in the 60s, with the introduction of the service economy, that this would lead inevitably to a complete meltdown of the global monetary system, and potentially civilization if we didn't change policy. And over the last 40 years, he's given 9 long-range economic forecasts at specific points where we saw an impending crash, a new level of blowout. And at those times, all the top economists, the top monetarists, in the world said, "Oh, that's not true. This is going to be great. This deregulation of banking, of airlines, getting rid of the Glass-Steagall, this will be really good because we're going to make a lot of money." And what ended up happening is every single one of these economists were wrong. And which brings us to the point that we're at now, where people probably if you don't know it directly, you probably have a sense that the financial system globally probably has until the end of the year at best. The markets have been propped up artificially by the quantitative easing policy of the Federal Reserve. The banks are announcing record 30% profits, while Detroit is being pushed into bankruptcy and the pensions are being fleeced, while businesses are being shut down, while people's ability to survive is collapsing, and the price of food, gas, and everything is going through the ceiling. So we're right now at a point where we can't be for certain, absolute certainty, but it's pretty darn likely that by sometime around September, October, if not by the end of the year, you're going to have a pretty big collapse in 2007. So the mission of our organization right now is to meet this challenge by forcing through immediately the Glass-Steagall banking laws that were established in 1933. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Glass-Steagall, just put it in very simple terms, and actually what I'll do, is, one second, I'll use some of our websites so that people who aren't familiar with our website will know where to go later to do the research on your own. Because everything we're going to talk about tonight and much more is elaborated and developed in detail and extensively on our website. So, what is the Glass-Steagall Act? Well, this was a law that was established in 1933 by FDR, which FDIC was created under. And as everybody knows, Wall Street and all their Ponzi schemes led the United States to a major crash in 1929 that created the Great Depression. Mass unemployment, starvation, dust bowls, just disaster. And when FDR came into power, within his first 100 days, Glass-Steagall was one of the key pieces of legislation. And what Glass-Steagall basically entails is that FDR said that we're going to insure people's deposits so that people would have confidence to take their money out from underneath their pillow or from their mattress and put it back into the system. Because having the money in the banks, if your money is under your pillow, it's stationary. It's not doing any good. It's basically worthless. But if you can put it in the banking system to lend out for useful projects, then it can do some good. Right? So FDR wanted to give people the courage to be able to put their money back in the banks without having to fear that the banks will lose it. So part of the stipulation of Glass-Steagall is that a bank that would hold the deposits that would be insured, FDIC insurance, that they could not be engaged in any kind of risk. They couldn't speculate in the markets, period. They couldn't be associated with investment banks that speculate in the markets. Right? So the idea was to try to create a banking system much like, I guess, what was portrayed in the old movie It's a Wonderful Life, right? Where you had small to medium-sized banks. The bank head basically pretty much knew everybody in the community to a greater or lesser extent. And the idea was that the bank would take the deposits and would loan it. It would loan it to the community, right? Businesses, right? Personal loans and whatnot, but things that were relatively safe. Pretty much, you weren't going to be, putting it into a credit default slump, right? And then that way, people whose money was in the bank, they could be confident that it would be there. And we also had a higher interest rate then. People can actually had a decent interest on their savings account, right? Had an incentive to put it there. And that way, if you wanted to invest in the markets, you could still, but you had to place it into an investment bank, which didn't have any no government guarantees, right? No insurance for the money. And that way, you knew that if the firm invested your money, they lost it, that was a risk you took, right? You knew the risk, but you weren't going to be insured. And so what Glass-Steagall succeeded in doing is it took where, prior to Glass-Steagall, the United States had basically a banking collapse every 15 years. And with the introduction of Glass-Steagall, we managed to go pretty much 66 years without any major collapse, just by separating this investment banking from the commercial banking. Now, we did end up getting into some trouble pretty much in the 80s, like with the same mortgages, which people I'm sure remember. But that was largely because the banks had deployed to create loopholes and find ways to whittle down Glass-Steagall before it was actually officially canceled in 1999, which led to the formation of the bank too big to fail, with Citigroup, Sandy Weil, and this crowd. So this is something that has to be implemented immediately, because with the crash coming, it's not a question of whether the $1.6 quadrillion of financial derivatives is going to blow out. It is going to blow out. The question is that who is going to be beholden to pay the debt? If the United States is still on the hook to pay this debt, if we're in a situation where Sandy Weil or more like what's the guy named head of J.P. Morgan? Jamie Dimon. You guys have the opportunity to bum rush the Congress at a point of meltdown to get another mega bailout. Then the United States is going to go down with it. But if we get Glass-Steagall, and we absolutely can right now, that financial time bomb, when it explodes, it's just going to blow them apart. It's going to kill Wall Street, and it's going to kill the City of London and these major financial institutions, which is going to be a good thing. Because right now, I can tell you, everything that's in the market right now is worthless. You think your investments are there? They're not there. You think you can cash out? Well, you may be able to cash out right now, but you might be hit with a $250 million cancellation fee like Detroit was. You might have to liquidate your own pension to cover it. But in reality, Wall Street, it's empty. There's nothing. It's not there. And so don't get to say, well, maybe we can't have, maybe we have to, I have to save my investments if my retirement is invested. We've got to save these banks, which is the line that we were given in 2007. If you buy into that, you're absolutely doomed. We're all doomed. But what we can do by getting Glass-Steagall through is we can create new value in the economy, very much like what FDR did with the New Deal. And so where's the value going to come from? Well, go back here. The main value is going to come from what Dennis brought up with the WAPA. Now, are people here familiar with WAPA? See a show of hands of people who have heard of it? Know it? Okay. The WAPA was a project that was developed in the 1950s and 60s, the North American Water and Power Alliance, which was something that both Eisenhower and Kennedy were very interested in. Matter of fact, under Kennedy, he was actually actively involved in pushing this with the leadership of Congressman Frank Moss.
I mentioned he's a senator from Utah.
Senator from Utah. Yeah. And the basic concept is how do we create, again, value in the economy? How do we improve the productivity of man? And what Nawapa pointed out, as you can see here, the map, what this shows is the North American continent, and the size of the arrows are the pictorial image of the size of the flow of water that is running to the ocean as it currently exists. Well, now, actually, this is not as it currently exists, but this is, the main thing is to look at the flow. So you can see that from the Mississippi, the Yukon, the Mackenzie River, we have the Columbia, we have a fair amount of water on the continent, but we have a problem. And the problem is, this is actually a better picture, is that you don't get very much in the western states. Now the reason for that is simply doing with the fact that we have a huge set of mountain range right on the western coast. And we have another large mountain range to the east of us with the Rockies. And so what happens is that you have this huge amount of precipitation that will come in from the Pacific or from the Atlantic. These barriers, it pushes the moisture up, and the moisture condenses and rains. So because of the way the mountains were pushed up, there's a natural barrier that prevents this basin in the middle from getting sufficient rainfall. So the idea was that, very similar to the Tennessee Valley Authority, where I don't know if people are aware of one of the great, what was so new about the TVA, but one of the key feats that had never been done before was the Tennessee Valley Authority was the first time that we ever attempted to manage an entire river system, right, from start to finish. Right? It went through 6 states, I believe, but it was top down. It was the idea that you look at the whole system based on an idea of the totality. You figure out where is the best place to put your dams, to catch the water, where you want your hydroelectric set, right, to increase the productivity of the area to the best possible. And it was a great victory. It was an absolute stupendous victory. And even today, the TVA's commitment is to try to produce electricity as cheaply as possible, right, for the citizens, for the consumer, which is a bit different than the average businessman's thinking in the kind of monetary system, which is how do I get the most for my product, right? The idea is no, how do we make this cheap and available to the population to help increase their productivity, right? The productivity of society as a whole, for the benefit of the whole. So Nawapa was based on this idea of the TVA. And so the idea was, now let's look at the whole continent. Right? Let's look at the whole water system for the continent. And let's try to design a program that would allow us to be able to manage the system. So Parsons' company has the initial concept that Congressman Frank Moss from Utah and Kennedy were pushing. And there was very intense negotiations going on back in the 60s with the Canadians on this, right? Because obviously the water flows right through Canada. But there was a tremendous amount of support among certain parliamentarians there, because Canada is going to be one of the prime beneficiaries of the project, not just in terms of water systems, but also in terms of an increase in electricity for Western Canada. Now this here, as you can see with the color, is the amount of rain or precipitation these regions of the United States, Canada, and Mexico receive each year. And this is the basic Nawapa project. This is by building a series of about 96 dams with tunneling, canals, and whatnot, the primary routes that the water will flow down. Effectively, the western desert states are going to receive about 158 million acre-feet a year. Now, what that means is it means that the water's value is increased. Because the water up north, if the water comes across here and just dumps and then goes into the ocean, what's its value? It's worthless. What does it do? It does nothing. It doesn't improve anything. But by bringing the water, by creating this new route and bringing the water down, now the water can be used to increase the photosynthetic activity, right, of the biosphere, right, which has more than just simply the question of producing food, right? Plants actually transform the soil, right? Plants actually take minerals and other materials from the soil and concentrate it through a living process, right? And refine and create actual improved soil through that process. Plus, one great thing about water is water doesn't just burn up and disappear. You don't destroy water by using water. Water is always there. And the more that you increase the photosynthetic activity within that region, the more moisture that is going to be released into the air through the evaporation from the plant life, as well as that were created. So you're going to now begin to add an increased moisture to the air that over a period of time can trigger the natural hydrological cycle within the region rains, right? Which you can also do with the help of some of the work that of seeding, clouds and things like that. So you can trigger the hydrological cycle, which will basically allow you to recycle that water that you're bringing down. I think they estimate about 2.5 times that the water will be absorbed by the plants, evaporate in the air, rainfall, and that will go 2.5 to 3 times before the water actually goes back into the ocean. So you're creating real value. You're creating an increased quality of biological activity, which allows you to increase the ability to promote life, to sustain life on the planet. And you're transforming the air, you're transforming everything. So here you can see, to give a little bit of an idea of this, in the northwestern basins and the southwestern basins, in the northwestern basins, they have 1,220 million acre feet a year of rainfall. I believe that's what it's referring to. Yeah, for runoff of each basin. 1,220 million acre feet a year. Where in the southwestern basins, you can see it's quite a bit less. Now this here is an image, satellite image, of photosynthetic activity that's measured through the evapotranspiration of the plants. So you get a sense here, pretty darn dry. There's the 100th parallel. Everything over here is pretty lush and green. Rocky Mountains block it here. The Sierra Nevada block it here. You have a nice little green spot right down the middle there with the Central Valley due to the California Water Project. Wait, California, because I know people here like to attack California. I'm from California. But California is the most hydrologically transformed part of the entire world. It has the longest water irrigation canal of the whole world. It has a greater water management system than anywhere. And it happens to be one of the biggest ag producers in the whole country. Unfortunately, through 40, 50 years of this post-industrial society, as we all know, the farmers are getting the short end of the stick in terms of meeting their needs for water to do what they do best, which is to produce the food that feeds us. Right? But that's something that with NWAPA and with Glass-Steagall we're going to change very rapidly. But the exciting part is, by looking at that, is not only are we going to get the agricultural production in the Central Valley of California back up, but we can make all of these red states, and I mean red in terms of lack of vegetation, we can turn them blue. But in terms of precipitation, we can actually increase the agriculture. Matter of fact, a lot of people at the meeting we spoke at today, they were quite surprised is that the largest reservoir for the United States is going to be found 30 miles north of Flagstaff. And what is going to be named Lake Navajo, that's what they suggested it be called. It's going to be, I think, 2 times were 3 times the size of Lake Mead. So we could see very quickly Nevada becoming an ag state. Yeah.
Will you entertain questions at the end, or may I ask one?
No, you can ask me to.
Being that you brought up the red team and the blue team, as I
Right.
like to call them, I'm more than puzzled looking at this particular out at those 3 individuals whose asterisk is by their name.
Right.
I'm puzzled that these 3 people really want to do anything for the people of Arizona or the people of the United States of America, other than to continue to enslave us. So how the hell do these people put their names on this bill?
Yeah.
It blows my,
Yeah.
I'll take a strange bedfellows, this is a real.
Yeah.
I can mention how that is.
Please.
They put their name on that bill, but they haven't done a blasted thing since that. They're not pushing for it. It's like, this is a good thing, you know, keep from being, you know, wiped out later, put your name on this, but don't do anything to
So-
encourage it to get covered.
So they're using it to placate the
They would do it. You know, like Kirsten Sim was on the banking commission. You know, she probably said, you know, because I pounded on her on Glass-Steagall, and she finally put it in her platform, so she, and pounded on her since. Well, she thinks that, okay, I gotta do this, but I'm not gonna give a press announcement, I'm not gonna work for it, I'm gonna do a, you know, underground, you know, I got my name on it, but that's all I got to do.
Can't they be called on that?
Well, that's what we need to do.
We need to call them on it.
That's one of the things we need to do.
How about an
These
affidavit?
people, when they put their name on it, now let's see if they're gonna do anything about it. You know, they're not holding any press conferences, they don't let
I mean,
anybody
a lot
else.
of them at the time they didn't know how serious it was. And frankly, Wall Street and this crowd were against, didn't think it was ever going to get this far. So, I mean, that's what's so critical about the point right now. At that point of the collapse, and at a point at which our enemies know they could possibly be defeated, now they're counterattacking. I mean, they're out to stop Glass-Steagall every way possible. So there are many different angles in which Eric may want to go into, but that they now know this is serious, both sides. And this is where, you know, the real guts are going to be shown. Who is going to actually stick to this and fight?
See, the one thing I would say about this is that the LaRouche movement has been beating the war drum on Glass-Steagall for a number of years. And the way that Wall Street and the financiers in London have tried to play it is saying that, oh, well, Glass-Steagall wouldn't have made a difference anyways, right? It wouldn't have changed anything in the 2007 crash. And then just try to ignore it and just try to go with that. But what's happened is that within the last, you know, especially the last 6 months, we have been able to get more than half of the states' legislatures in the United States to introduce memorial legislation demanding the restoration of Glass-Steagall. We've also, through getting people just like yourself to call the Congress, that they move on this immediately, to acquiesce or act because they do think it's a good idea, to add the names to it, which we have about, I think, 78 congressmen now and about 10 senators. And the other factor is this, is that when you're on the Titanic and you can be, and it's clear to you what little options you have, sometimes you can forget a lot of the positions you took and, or politicking to act on a right idea at the right time. Because what we started doing, especially, we had a 3-week mobilization just before Congress went out of session, forced them to either introduce the Glass-Steagall legislation for a vote immediately or to stay in session until they did. And the ante on it was, and this was what LaRouche's direct insight, is our policy committee went into the halls of Congress and said, look, Wall Street is criminal. It's trying to kill off the population right now, deliberately. Us to use Glass-Steagall to kill Wall Street immediately. And we went directly to the staffers and the congressmen themselves and put this right on their table. The intention of Glass-Steagall was to kill Wall Street because there's nothing good about Wall Street at all. Zero. There's nothing there, no value, right? They're a criminal syndicate. We had to eliminate them once and for good.
So is the United States Congress, in my experience, too.
Yeah, well, they're a bunch of schmoes because, and the funny part is that some of these congressmen, all of a sudden, they had their attention, and they became very serious. Where before, you know, they didn't quite grasp what we meant. We had other congressmen who had been resistant in the past who said, "I know that's what you were trying to do, and that's why I'm here to block you from doing it. Because J.P. Morgan and these people are my constituents." And we helped cut through with these guys because those who started to say, "Oh no, I don't think Glass-Steagall makes a difference." Like, well, not just Schweiker, but who's the congressman? Schweiker. Well, Schweiker's the main guy. Schweiker, we just talked to Schweiker today at this event, and he gave us this line. You know, Glass-Steagall wouldn't have affected anything. And what we started asking them directly is that, well, how much money is Wall Street giving you for your re-election campaign this year? Right?
Schweiker's in a safe seat. He doesn't need to raise a dime. He's got no Republican competition with anybody up against him. That's why he's running around the country with Eric Cantor, trying to lap it up with the establishment powers. So the conservatives, of which I'm one, believe we've lost it, unfortunately. But you know how partisan the political class is right now. If we get Salmon and Schweiker, Gozard, and let's say Franks, which Franks is doubtful and Schweiker is doubtful. But if we get the two real conservatives or the closest people we have to it to put their names on it, when Grijalva, who's a Marxist, and Cinema, who God knows, she's from another planet.
Right.
And when they find out who's supporting putting names off it and vote against it.
I wouldn't say it's true, and the reason is that the system's dead. The system, right now, look, the other factor, look, Wall Street's finished, and everything associates finished. If we're associated with Wall Street to pay off their debts the way we're doing right now with the quantitative easing and the other stuff that Treasury's doing, we're finished.
I don't disagree with you a bit, and believe me, I'm rooting for you. Anything we can do to save this thing. But you were the one that brought up the Titanic.
Yeah.
I want to find out that I'm trying to avoid the iceberg if I have to go down on a rope and kick the ship back a few feet. That's what I'm trying to do, not be up on deck rearranging the deck chairs.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Because when it's underwater, it doesn't make a hoop bit of difference.
Well, this is, I mean, LaRouche is always very clear. We always have to take a principled stand. We're fighting for principle, not on issues. And really the question is, why aren't these congressmen that you referenced that should be on, why haven't they co-sponsored? Because, from my understanding, you're a conservative, right? You're not supposed to be for bailouts of banks. You know, isn't the idea that, well, if you did something wrong, you have to pay the consequences for it? Why should the citizens
You and I are not in disagreement on this one iota.
No, but I'm saying that we have to bring that to the congressmen themselves and ask them.
Dealing with unprincipled people. These people that you have, including the guy at the top of the list with the asterisks, these people are going to back away. As soon as they recognize that this is a principled stand for the people of the United States of America, they're going to put their tail, they're going to get out of this thing like nobody's business. And if we have one or two others that will take the principled stand, I'm sorry. And then it goes to the Senate, which is the one that's in existence now with that convict from Nevada running things. They're not even going to pick this bill up.
Well, no, but don't be so, I wouldn't be so cynical. It's up to us. We have to be the landmines behind them that force them to charge forward. Right?
I'm just saying, you know, I've been dealt with Schweikart, and he, you know, he's talked to Lynn. And Lynn's, you know, he told Lynn that the message I got from Lynn is that Schweikart said that Glass-Steagall's in Dodd-Frank. Okay. Number one, I don't know who told him that, but number two, I doubt if he's read Dodd-Frank. The other thing he said are definitely talking points of the bank. He says, I don't want to hurt the big banks. I don't want to keep them from doing modern banking. You know, that was what they tried in 33 that we put them in jail for. And I don't want to prevent them from doing hedging. So what people have to do is know how to respond when he makes stupid statements. And so we need to get people to go to these different opportunities. We need to have more people to pound on them. In other words, if we get more people behind in understanding what the battle is, then I think we can get these guys moving. But they do have, you know, I was thinking about maybe we could get together and do a new reality show. You know, the streetwalkers of Wall Street. David Schweikart could be the Arizona man. Now, that, you know, there's these guys, we have to attack them. You know, because the thing that we have is the truth. They lie. So you know, we have principles, we have the truth. You know, the thing though sometimes is your opinion isn't worth anything. The only thing that matters is so we need to fight with the truth, and that's why we have this website that helps people get an understanding of what the truth is. You know, we've been lied to about everything. We've been lied about our history. You know, you know, people don't know the truth. You know, we've got the modern day Roman Empire going on here where the oligarchy, you know, puts all the tribes out there every weekend to see what basketball team wins and what football team wins and what team wins. And so these people aren't thinking about, they'll be in the Coliseum when the Lions are eating.
I just want to raise a question to
Eric.
Eric, sorry. I wonder whether it's good, whether it's politic to state unequivocally that the ultimate goal of Glass-Steagall is to kill Wall Street. Just from a political and sales and marketing point of view, to Congress wouldn't want to get to vote on this. I would say a more tempered position would sell better.
Like Neuter?
Sorry.
Neuter Wall Street.
No, I wouldn't even reference necessarily Wall Street. You're focusing
Well,
on
maybe,
banks.
maybe the thing that we should say is not Wall Street, but the criminal financial institutions.
No, I think you gotta,
But you gotta say which are Wall Street.
It won't work.
Stereo in here.
It won't work, because what you always have to express is you have to express your intent. Your intent is for society to survive. It's not. Wall Street is inherently insolvent. The international banking system is insolvent. The whole system right now globally is finished. Absolutely 100%. You can't have a recovery in it, period. So you have to basically come to terms with that, and you have to tell these guys the intent, because British monarchy is intent on reducing the world's population to less than 1 billion people. They run Wall Street. They're the ones that are orchestrating this, well, the prevention of Glass-Steagall right now. Because they know if Glass-Steagall does not get implemented, that they're going to be very well on their way to getting that population reduction down. And so we can't go in there and try to sell it. Because, you know, it's like telling a guy, oh, join the army, war is not so bad, you won't, you know, and then as soon as they, you know, get shot at, they're out of here. And that's what happens with these politicians. You have to, the reason that we were so effective is that we went in there with the state legislators and with these congressmen. We told them that, yes, if you go for this, Wall Street's going to come after you. They're going to go after you. They're going to try to get rid of you, right? But if we don't get this through, we're dead. Why do you think the dictatorship on the United States right now is spying on people, right? Why do you think they're doing all the things they're doing, right? It's no different than what Hitler did. And remember that Hitler was brought to power with the money of Wall Street and the City of London, right? Bush's grandfather, as a matter of fact, was the key guy with the Brown Brothers Harriman Bank that moved the money into the Nazi coffers to secure the Nazi elections. Right? So,
Like, two comments. One has to do with this PR aspect. From what I'm understanding, the purpose of Glass-Steagall is for the depositor to be able to keep his or her money. Is that not what it amounts to?
Yes.
So it's not robbed by the bank.
right.
Okay? Then the PR aspect of that is to say that this is for the deposit, for you, the people, for them to be able to keep their money. You don't attack the bank. You do this thing about supporting the people. So the people then understand that their money in the bank is in peril. That's the problem to address, I think. Don't attack Wall Street. You support the people keeping their money. That's one comment. The second is, you're talking about getting other people known about this. I'm a precinct committeeman in my legislative district. I've never heard of this thing, never talked about it. Does it make any sense at all to go to the legislative district chairman or the Maricopa County group of these chairmen and approach them with this information so it starts to get disseminated to the precinct committeemen in various areas? So I would go to the I would go. You could do it from the guy who's chairman of the Republican Party in the state, but I think one of the best to go is this organization that meets quite frequently, the Maricopa County Republican Committee, where the chairman of the various legislative districts meet. You go there and tell them what's happening, and then it can start disseminating, and you can see what's happening.
Let Tommy speak there to that.
Well, I'm a precinct committeeman in the LD 27, which runs along South Mountain Baseline Road out into Levine. And I presented a Glass-Steagall resolution that Dennis wrote, and we modified it a little bit, and my LD passed it. Now, I have not been able to get it any further because our chairman took off on vacation. I missed the last meeting when he was back. But we did get it started at the LD level, and if there are any precinct committeemen in here, whatever you are, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whoever, you start it, and you can get it from Dennis. He can email it to you, the resolution. We'll work with you on wording the resolution.
Who's the chair at 27?
Terry Rapp.
Okay, I had coffee with him yesterday afternoon.
I'm in 28.
Oh,
LD 28. And,
you have Justice Sandra Day O'Connor's son,
Right.
Scott, as your
Scott
chairman.
Connor.
He's not quite over with Rahalva, but he's about as close to McCain as you could get.
I'm just
Well,
saying that I
2
did,
cents worth.
you know, I was able to do that,
Yeah.
and
Understand.
I can use that because when Dennis and I and Jennifer, thank you, went to the state legislature and we talked to different legislators, I was able to say that I had that passed. I didn't have a copy, but I was able to say that I had that passed in my legislative district, and some of them were very done.
Well, that's exactly the point, is that we have to, I mean, look, we have, October is the historic month for financial crashes. That's not a lot. September, October, maybe delayed till November. Right now are freaked. And they have been deploying themselves en masse. Like one example was in Delaware, where a state senator had introduced a resolution for Glass-Steagall, little state of Delaware. Right? It's a non-binding resolution, just to advocate Glass-Steagall. 8 top bankers showed up at this event and intimidated and bullied and effectively shut down these by throwing the Glass-Steagall resolution out the door. Then we just got back from the National Conference of State Legislators who had their conference in Atlanta because this senator was pissed that they did this thing to her state. And you know, the line that the bankers use, it says, well, you know, we would really hope that Delaware would remain a banker-friendly state. Because I think we have about 20, 30,000 people we're employing in the state of Delaware, which, if you're not friendly, we may just have to take them somewhere else. So what happened is she introduced a resolution at the National Conference of State Legislators in Atlanta. And this time it wasn't 8 bankers, but it was literally 80 top bankers. As a matter of fact, the, well, if I have my paper, where did it go? Okay. The, Scott word day that the National Bankers Association, or the chief officer of the American Banking Association, has responded to a letter to the editor by our member Paul Gallagher, who was a response to a statement from Jamie Dimon in the Oklahoma paper, where he said that we don't need Glass-Steagall. So our person wrote a letter to the editor in promotion of Glass-Steagall. And the chief officer of the American Bankers Association has written a response to Paul Gallagher's. We don't know how far it's circulating, but it's the same garbage. But these guys are going all out with everything they have to try to stop this legislation from being passed.
All right, hold it. They stopped Delaware, they stopped the resolution in Delaware, and now you're saying they went to the Association of State Legislatures.
National
in
Congress. Yeah.
And what happened to the resolution there?
But what ended up happening was they ended up having intimidated her by using the Delaware delegation to get her to pull the resolution, which never happens at these things. They never pull resolutions. And some of our other legislators who were more committed to it managed in the plenary session to have it put as an amendment. It ought to have as an amendment on a resolution concerning how the federal budgets were affecting state budgets. And this led to a pitched battle. So it ended up having 15 minutes of debate on this. And it ended up getting voted down. They wouldn't allow it. But some
The percentage that got voted down, was it a landslide?
No, it wasn't. Well, I mean, if you say maybe it was like 60 to 40 or something like this. But it was 15 minutes of debate. And if anybody's familiar with the concept of a Pyrrhic victory, it just might be that. Because what they had to do is they had to expose their hand. Totally. And what happened was they were telling these guys, it wasn't just that they were saying Glass-Steagall would be a bad idea. It would make things worse. We wouldn't be able to make you as good at deals, and so forth. But what they ended up resulting or coming down to at the last is they said, you don't want to be associated with Lyndon LaRouche anymore. Because Glass-Steagall is a Lyndon LaRouche idea. This is all LaRouche. And if you go with this, then you must be with LaRouche. And you know what they say about LaRouche, don't you? Right? So they just use this total intimidation. And they're not doing this because, they got some extra time on it. They are freaked out. They know that it goes through right now. They're finished. Actually, some of them know that even if it doesn't go through, they're still finished. Right? They're finished regardless. It's a question whether they take us with them. And what we have to do, and this is why you have to be frank, right, with them. We have to kill Wall Street because they are intending to kill us right now. You have to say that to the congressmen, the state legislatures, your precinct chairmen, because that's the truth. And if we don't mobilize people to respond to the truth of the situation, then it's going to be a tragedy. And I'll say one other thing is that Americans, the thing about America that makes us unique in the world is we accomplish the impossible. We are able to create miracles.
Eric, forgive me. This gentleman back here had a lot of wisdom that he threw out.
Mm-hmm.
When you are something to somebody, and I'm talking about an idea, this is an intangible. You're trying to get Joe and Mary America to grasp it well enough to confidently approach and have a man-to-man conversation. That's hard to do for the average dumbed-down American. Okay?
Tell me about it.
So, yeah, I don't have to, you've experienced it. But how you talk about something, you walk into a Congress and say, we got to kill Wall Street.
You're gone.
Please have my guests removed. I mean, it's going to sound...
That is not the response that we're getting. That is not the response we're getting. We're getting, from the better people who are connected with what's going down right now, we're getting a different response.
What does kill Wall Street mean?
See, that's the point.
Mm-hmm.
That is exactly.
Let me just get to this one question in the back here. Or comment.
It's not a question. I'd like to say that no party affiliations, this is an American issue. This is an American issue, and that's what needs to be expressed primarily. Secondarily, the man in red and the gentleman in front of me, they do have a point, because when I talk to anyone at the congressional level or senatorial level, I always explain to them explicitly that, we had a bailout in 2008, But there's also such a concept called a bail-in, which is what Glass-Steagall will prevent. And then I explain what a bail-in entails. It entails the fact that a bank will have the investment banks will have the power to reach into your private checking account, your retirement account, your savings account, and possess it. You penniless. You will not be able to buy a drop of water or a morsel to eat. Many people can die as a result of that. And I don't have to say kill Wall Street to get my point across. I think reaching into the heart of an individual and our families and people we love and care about, that is what we have to reach and grasp and make the person listening grasp. We've got to let them know that life and death is there. But just saying kill Wall Street in that fashion, that puts a lot of people off.
They don't understand that.
They don't get that. But they get life and death as far as inability to purchase what we have to do to live. That is important. So it's an American issue.
You had a question?
Well put.
I do. I agree with your thoughts on Glass-Steagall. It seems to me like it's already too far gone.
No,
If we're relying on John McCain, who was actually one of the representatives and one of the men that standed with Clinton when it was repealed, if we're relying on this guy to do anything to save your checking
Can't rely
account,
on him for anything.
you guys are in trouble.
We rely on him to see.
And my statement is, close your checking account. Don't bank with JP Morgan. Pull your money out of your 401k. Don't go to these banks. Get your loved ones and the people that you care about to stop using these banks.
Exactly.
You want to go and talk to John McCain and be my guest and take a guillotine with you. This guy's not going to do anything, and he's certainly not going to save your children and your grandchildren. This guy stood with Clinton. What are we doing? This is.
Well, let me.
What does kill Wall Street mean?
I'll get to that in a second. She just wanted to say that.
In addition to that, she is making a point that is valid as well. Bank locally, bank with credit unions, and even if our banks fail in this country, our national banks, it's really okay because it's not hard or complicated to restructure the banking system. You can create state banks and local banks or county banks that are even more effective and more successful than the large corporate banks. So it can be done. It has been done. And I think, is it Washington it was done?
No,
Or
North
state?
Dakota.
North Dakota. They have a local banking system that has been very successful and very secure. And they are immune. What can do to them?
Now, what I'll say is this: is that we're going to get it. Now, we'll take a step back, right, and we'll look at the bigger picture again. Because right now, the one thing is that getting a different bank, pulling your money out, is not going to mean anything because you're looking at hyperinflation of the dollar and all the currencies in the world. So you're not going to have anything. It doesn't matter. You can have all the money you want. You can have gold, you want silver. You're looking at a blowout of the system that allows for trade, allows for commerce. It's collapsed. That's what we're looking at. So you can't, there's not any other thing than getting Glass-Steagall through now than a sovereign credit system to finance projects like NAWAPA. Now, why Wall Street? We're going to come back to that. Well, Wall Street historically has been nothing but an arm of the British Empire. It was created by a British agent, Aaron Burr, who was the founding of the Bank of Manhattan. This was the same Aaron who was not only known as a traitor to the United States, working on behalf of the British, but he killed the Treasury Secretary, Alexander Hamilton, who was the guy that founded the idea of a national bank and a sovereign credit system. And so right now the problem that we have to look at is, well, Wall Street is an extension of the British. What is their agenda? Right? How are they planning to carry this thing out? Well, in right now people may have seen that there was a, and as you see here, I'm just on the page here, if you go to Stop World War III, this is where some of the videos are that I'm going to show you. You should see all of these videos. They're all extremely important. On Benghazi, the press conference that Walter Jones gave, Congressman Jones on this. But people use these images of dead children. And the claim is that the Syrian government has just used chemical weapons and killed something upwards of 1,100 people. Now, why is this all over the press, right? Well, you say, did it happen? Well, that's not why it's there. The policy of the British right now to achieve this goal of reducing the population is to get the United States into war with Russia. And Syria is being used as the cockpit to get that war. So what you have is you have a situation where the Obama administration, right, and John McCain have found themselves collaborating with Al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood, right? We had the situation earlier where Obama had said in Libya that we had a dictator, Gaddafi, and they told the Russians that we were going to be doing humanitarian aid, that's it. You know, we're just helping the poor people who are suffering under the dictatorship of Gaddafi. And next thing you know, the Russians are watching us bomb the country to smithereens for 280 days, which leads to the brutal murder of Gaddafi, right? Totally illegal in the way that it was carried out. And then Al-Qaeda taking over the country, possessing the weapons of the Libyan army. A year later, you have, or not about a year later, but you had almost a year ago, you had the situation in Benghazi, right? And as everybody knows, Obama, they lied about it, what really happened. But one of the key things about Benghazi, which some people may know, many probably don't, was that Benghazi was being used as the staging grounds for transferring arms from Libya to Syria to give to the Al-Qaeda rebels, who they call the Syrian rebels in Syria, to bring down the Assad government. And there's more to sort of the press, the video that we have on it. We're going to be putting out a lot more on this in the media period ahead. But what LaRouche has identified is that they don't care about Assad. They care about as much as Assad as they care about Saddam Hussein. They didn't care about Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden. These are just figures that they'll put up for you to target and to hate and to go along with these projects. The intention in all of this is to get the United States into a confrontation with Russia now, because both Russia and China have said explicitly that they're not, fool me once, shame on me, but you ain't gonna fool me twice. Especially since Syria is right on the southern border of Russia, right? They're not gonna allow a quagmire to erupt. And, it's not just Russia and China. General Dempsey's aware that if the Assad government fell, right? Matter of fact, Brennan just fired the undersecretary of the CIA, secretary, who came out stating that it's not in the United States' interest to have the Assad government fall, because if it fell, the chemical weapons of the Syrian government would fall into the hands of Al-Qaeda. It can be used against the United States and against other of our allies. So, why? Why is John McCain going up there and having a lovey-dovey fest with Al-Qaeda rebels in Syria and going to Egypt to attack the military for disposing a dictator at the request of the population? Why is he backing the Muslim Brotherhood and Obama Hussein? Well, I honestly don't think McCain has any clue. I think McCain's insane. I think he's lost all his darn marbles. Maybe the one marble he had was a Glass-Steagall marble, so thank God for that. But
he's also supporting the dang border fence, if I remember.
But the thing right now is that we right now are very close to thermonuclear war. We're very close to World War III right now.
Based on what?
Based on.
Why do you say this stuff? Where do you get that?
The reality is that right now our pushing of this overthrow of Assad by arming the Al-Qaeda rebels, and the fact that this event that happened that you're seeing in the press today, the only reason that this is being put in the press today is to create a shock internationally that would justify in the minds the United States intervention into Syria.
And that means thermonuclear war?
Yeah, because Russia will not allow the United States to to overthrow the Assad government.
And how do you know that?
Because Putin said it. They said it explicitly. Matter of fact, David Cameron and Putin had a joke. Yeah, well, any war between the United States and Russia will go thermonuclear eventually. And it's something that both Putin and General... So
what's the goal of population drop?
yeah, it's a question of,
population density and all that. I was wondering, you're talking about kind of what we have learned from a result of a lot of this, like my friend John here, when they were talking about, what affects people on an issue, what affects people on a marketing campaign. Of course, people get upset when you tell them you're going to take control of their money. So quite often I do the G8, G20, and the APEC summits for the presidents and their prime ministers. I publish the official publication for them. So I hear a lot of traffic, and I'm also analyzed quite often by the various government agencies. And so recently we had, in Russia, when I was doing both summits, the G8 and G20 in Madrid, and you saw what happened with Russia. When they paid the bill, they took depositors' money and paid bills for the debt without them having any say-so in it. And the Russians went, gosh, what happened to our money? Then they did that with Iceland, right? Just came up with Iceland. Cyprus, yeah. And they said, their government said, under the new 9/11 Act, we're going to arrest those bankers, and they didn't go for it. Of course, they're pretty landlocked, so eventually they're going to get through and break them down like they did Delaware on the boat and stuff like that. So I guess what I'm hearing you're saying, don't be nice to them. This is a war. This is a lot of things. We've got to approach them and hit them in the head. What I'm seeing is also that, other than creating a deficit or going after population and decreasing debt, because debt is actually control and slavery, basically. It's a way to control people through debt. What I saw is basically companies like when we were doing the G20 and so forth like that, was in Ireland, Intel was going there because they wanted the tax benefit, and GE was also going there for how they're doing things. So there's two things. They're going for a population density drop and also for a tax benefit of what they're doing with their money. So I'm wondering, when I talk to them and I see them say, you say Glass-Steagall, and I see most of the people are over 40 here. You try to say, what is Glass-Steagall? Who is Mr. LaRouche? And there's got to be an easier way to phrase it in a sentence or two to put it across of who we are, what we're saying. I thought it was, John hit it pretty directly of saying, this is a way to protect your money as one thing, it's a way to kill Wall Street and get rid of the MIT creation of the derivative and other things like that. It's a way to kill that and stop it right now. They get some water and agriculture and food to feed the world back into the system.
Well, I think,
what have we learned?
Yeah, well, I think, because I feel like you were presenting, for example, how you're recruiting your congressmen or your people around you. And they're all very good ideas in terms of communicating, your way of attempting to communicate to them why this is in their interest, why people need to support Glass-Steagall and so forth. What I'm saying, though, is that in the crisis that we're in, we got to go a bit deeper, right? We've got to get at the intent now. And we've got to be really point blank, because we have to make sure, there's a lot of obfuscation and lack of clarity in general. And we are dealing with a population who has been systemically dumbed down, largely willfully, right?
Especially young people.
Well, especially young people.
I mean,
that gets at the heart of it.
That's who they're going after. They're going after the young people. or going after the internet.
The young people's minds are dead. Wall Street is a culture. We all went along with it in one way or another. But this is a cancer that we as a society have gone along with. I mean,
It's a progressive philosophy.
yes, it's deeper than just banking and money. It's this idea that we've been turned into beasts, animals, that we're only looking out for ourselves. And you only have to go and talk to and look at any young person out there. There's no empathy, there's no connection with the rest of humanity, or their commitment to the nation, or anything.
So, in a second, Tom, I just want to move just to one other thing to add another element into this, because again, we've got to get at this question of why. You know, why we have to go after explicitly we have to kill Wall Street. Why are we saying we have to, it's the British monarchy, right? Now, I'm going to play a short part of a video which people can watch in its entirety later. People know that we're coming up very quickly also on 9/11, both 1 and 2. And Mr. LaRouche has been very explicit, and I'll go through this a little bit afterwards, the way that we have to approach this to be able to get Glass-Steagall through, right, and to save the country. So let me play the first part of this so you can get a sense of the overview of this, and then we can talk a little bit more and take it from there, okay?
The financial system's coming confirmed now on several news sources that the Pentagon is experiencing explosions right now. This is, you know, this is a very systematic operation. It's snatching planes. There are three of these planes, two big. They are in this thing on the Pentagon. And to get that kind of thing to snatch planes like that, this means that there's been some kind of either incompetence or a fix on the whole security operation. Because you can't get this kind of thing without a real good. I'm a security student. There's somebody in charge. Security was not really very effectively in charge. You can't go around snatching planes in a coordinated fashion. Like this, you can't do it. You know, we're going to, we've got, you know, either we do the kinds of things I indicated in summary to you today, or else what you're going to have is not a government. You're going to have something like a Nazi regime. What you're going to get with a Trump administration, if it's determined to prevent itself from being opposed, its will, you're going to have crisis management, where members of the special warfare types, of the secret government, secret police teams, and so forth, will set off provocations, which will be used to destroy powers in motion in the name of crisis management. You will have small wars set off in various parts of the world, which the Bush administration will respond to with crisis management methods of provocation. That's what you'll get. And that's what the problem is. And you have to face that.
Eight months before the September 11, 2001 attacks, Lyndon LaRouche forecast that due to the oncoming economic breakdown crisis, the incoming Bush administration, the United States was at high risk for a Reichstag fire event. An event that would allow those in power to manage through dictatorial means an economic and social crisis that they were otherwise incompetent to handle. You're only living in the unbroken wake of that history. Those dictatorial measures established as crisis management in the hours, days, and years following the attack continue. They are expanding under President Barack Obama. The cover-up of the available facts of 9/11 continues, presumably for the benefit and ongoing partnership with the true culprits. The events in New York City and Washington, D.C. were calculated to set into motion an action waiting to be unleashed. The United States and much of the world has lived through the unfolding effects of that day and are now closer than ever to losing the United States as a nation and what that means for civilization. This is a story of the ongoing acts of war against the United States by a foreign, the complicity of its allies within the government itself. What follows is living history. It was 1979 in the capital city of Kabul, Afghanistan. The sitting government was faltering to stave off attacks launched by a grouping of increasingly better equipped rebel fighters, the Mujahideen. On Christmas Eve of that year, KGB units seized control of the presidential palace, assassinating the once pro-Moscow president and installing a new president announced from Soviet territory that the Russian armed forces had been invited to intervene. On December 26, the invitation turned into a full-scale invasion. Soon after, 1,000 Soviet troops were inside Afghanistan, beginning a 10-year war in occupation, which would end only shortly before the Soviet system itself collapsed. During that period, an immense asymmetric warfare capability would be built up in the region. The United States, Great Britain, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and others would each contribute billions to the effort over the course of that 10 years. The funds would go toward building a financial nexus to support the clandestine operations. Banks like the BCCI were established to serve all irregular warfare functions, from covert funding of the Mujahideen, the Taliban, and Al-Qaeda, to facilitating the massive British and American arms flows into the region, even to aiding the Pakistani nuclear weapons program. The funds would also enable the buildup of the now trillion-dollar dope trade out of a region where prior to 1979, there were virtually no opium plantations or heroin refining.
So you have financing covert wars and resistance operations through the use of opium, and it was a British policy. In a relatively short period of time, opium in the Golden Triangle region of Southeast Asia was greatly reduced, and suddenly opium production began to flourish in what was called the Golden Crescent region of Central and South Asia, particularly inside Afghanistan. Between the U.S. official funding and the matching funds that were provided by Saudi Arabia, pretty much dollar for dollar, you still could not account for the overall costs of this very extensive military operation using a surrogate Afghan Mujahideen apparatus made up of not only Afghanis, but people recruited from all of the ghettos, the most impoverished areas of the Maghreb region of North Africa.
The interest behind the drug and weapons trafficking operation has been known to the region since the 19th century as the British Empire's games, or alternately, the Great Game. This operation was the Ark of Crisis. British intelligence asset Dr. Bernard Lewis would coin the phrase and promote the spread of radical Islamic fundamentalism as the basis for the recruitment of the Mujahideen's irregular warfare forces, intending to weaken the adversary, the Soviet Union, from within. This would be adopted by the Carter administration under the guidance of National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski, who would later gloat of providing the funding to the Mujahideen, saying, "We didn't push the Russians to intervene, but we knowingly increased the probability they would."
On behalf of British intelligence, Bernard Lewis sold to Brzezinski and the Carter administration the idea that they should promote Islamic fundamentalism, running across what they called the Ark of Crisis or the Crescent of Crisis policy. And what Bernard Lewis argued was that you could create an entire zone of instability along this southern region of the Soviet Union by promoting Islam. Brzezinski bragged about the fact that he had gotten President Carter to sign off on an intelligence finding in the early spring of 1979, activating what would become the Islamic fundamentalist Afghan Mujahideen apparatus.
It was from this Anglo-American and Saudi-sponsored irregular warfare apparatus that Osama bin Laden was recruited as the trusted intermediary between the Afghan warlords and Saudi intelligence, serving the same function for the British and American interests in the region. Following the war, Osama remained a protected asset. In exchange, he would be given safe haven in London, where he maintained a fabulous private residence in the wealthy suburb of Wembley until the year 2000. The Saudis have renounced any formal ties with bin Laden. However, despite official denials, bin Laden would meet regularly with Saudi intelligence minister Turki bin Fahd, CIA, throughout the 1980s, and from available information, he would Saudi GID in cooperation with Pakistani ISI even throughout his house arrest in Abbottabad. Bin Faisal's chief of staff, Ahmed Badib, would later say bin Laden that he developed strong relations with the Saudi intelligence and with our embassy in Pakistan. We were happy with him. He was our man. He was doing all what we asked him.
Americans are asking, who attacked our country? The evidence we have gathered all points to a collection of loosely affiliated terrorist organizations known as Al-Qaeda. This group and its leader, a person named Osama bin Laden, are linked to many other organizations in different countries, including the Egyptian Islamic Jihad.
Once the Soviet forces retreated from Afghanistan, the Anglo-Americans, together with their extensive drug and arms trafficking apparatus, were dumped on the world as a legion of special forces trained mercenaries for hire. A nearly $1 trillion drug and arms trade that was built up over the course of the war had created an underground economy engulfing much of the former Soviet Union and Central Asia. But the flow of hard money from the drug and arms trade was increasingly what the international banking system relied on for capital. By the mid-1990s, it was known and accepted that the biggest banks on Wall Street and in London were billions of dollars of illegal drug money every year simply as a matter of policy. The fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet system began a new era in world affairs. It was a time that could have been defined by the strategic defensive, the East-West economic reconstruction proffered through circles in the Reagan administration by Lyndon LaRouche, but became a turn toward a new Roman Empire, the system of globalization, inaugurated through the partnership of British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, President George H.W. Bush, and French President Francois Mitterrand. Germany and continental Europe were bound under the Euro system. The former Soviet economy was turned into a raw materials exporter. State assets were sold for scrap. The territory itself was cannibalized to maintain what the British called a balance of power. Without the threat of the Cold War, the United States gave up even the pretense to a productive economy. Military production itself was transformed under the revolution in military affairs, entrusting national defense to private military mercenary forces and shifting to so-called smart weaponry. At this time, a global partnership was rekindled, and the Bush senior administration revived the treasonous Anglo-American special relationship with the stated purpose of creating a Pax Americana. That doomed system of globalization depended on the stepwise ratcheting up, paying high-skilled U.S. jobs overseas, decreasing standards of living, while increasing nominal values in the financial sector. With the sequential crashing of fictitious asset bubbles, the telecommunications bubble, the dot-com bubble, and soon the housing bubble, new means were required to hold that system together. Nothing less than a veritable fascist dictatorship over the nation wielding the greatest military force and the greatest economic force would make a suitable partner in securing that globalized system. But it required a casus belli.
In early January of 2001, before the inauguration of George W. Bush as president, I warned that the general would be that the U.S. economy would be a failure. Its policies of Bush would be a total failure. We were headed into a downslide, which in fact has happened all throughout the period. And to think we had to fear from inside the U.S. government that someone would set off a form of terrorist incident within the year which would shock the nation into submission. Now, certain facts are not known, and I shall not say what I know now. But I shall say that I do know, beyond doubt, that 9/11 was an inside job.
But whose end we will not see. It is the story of a new world that became a friend and liberator.
As the second plane flew into the South Tower, President Bush was informed at Booker Elementary School that the United States was under attack. Vice President Cheney was ushered into an underground bunker as procedure in the continuity of government plan. In the first meeting of the Bush cabinet in the hours that followed, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary of Defense Paul Wolfowitz would encourage Bush not to limit the response to the attacks, but to think more broadly of an invasion of Iraq, Afghanistan, Sudan, and Iran. In the next 24 hours, all flights in U.S. airspace were grounded, yet a private aircraft landed in Washington, D.C., carrying the head of the British Secret Intelligence Service, MI6, and the Deputy Chief of British Service, MI5. Later, CIA Director George Tenet would reflect, saying, "I still don't know how the country." By the end of the week, another private flight would leave the country, this one carrying approximately 1 Arabian citizens, including 24 members of the bin Laden family, before the action any of them.
The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them. I appreciate that very much.
Actually went a little longer than I hoped it did. What LaRouche has made clear right now is that the enemy that carried out September 11th, the same enemy who carried out Benghazi, and who is now staging this war in Syria in the face of another major financial crisis, is none other than the British monarchy and the monarchy of Saudi Arabia. The evidence that we have, and that Senator Bob Graham was able to put together during the 9/11 Commission, directly links the Prince Bandar with financing the 9/11 hijackers in San Diego. That's something that we know. You know, the numbers of Saudis that were in the United States when all the other planes were shut down. But this is what we're facing. And the incident that just happened yesterday in Syria with these children is similar. It's for shock effect. It's to try to justify in our minds why we should go into war into this country. So this, I think, we don't have much time left for the evening, but I want to make the point is that coming back to the question of Wall Street, coming back to the question of the British, the system's disintegrating, and the policy coming directly from these institutions is to destroy the United States. Now, does everybody in Wall Street institutions understand that? Probably not. They're probably mostly in it for their own selfish gain and survival. But there are those coming from the British and the Saudi monarchy that are very conscious who are orchestrating events. Therefore, proven to us, if we're going to be effective, is you got to call a spade, and you got to go to war. The United States must survive. For the world to survive, it's dependent upon the United States to survive. And the only way that we're going to survive is if we respond to LaRouche's leadership in declaring war against Wall Street and the British monarchy by implementing Glass-Steagall and putting in exactly those terms. And right now with the September 11th coming up, with the attempt right now of the British monarchy and the Saudis to get us into a new war, right? Not just in Syria, but with Russia, using Syria as the cockpit. We have to really put the pressure on our congressmen and our legislators, and we just have to be truthful with, you have to go to the website and you got to study to really know it, right? And then you think it through on how you communicate it. But we have to be very blunt with people right now, because this is a hard pill to swallow, but the truth always is. And if you ever hedge your bets on the truth to try to pitch it in a way that sounds more plausible, you always will lose. You got to stick to your guns. And that's it. And I can tell you, I've been with LaRouche for 22 years, and I've known about him since I was 10. So I've been following the vast majority of my life. And in the 22 years that I worked with LaRouche, I've been involved in many, many battles. And I can tell you, every single battle was lost was because there was somebody that thought they knew more about strategy than LaRouche. Because they had this exact line that we have to pitch it different, we have to make it appeal. And I can tell you, in 22 years of fighting with LaRouche, every time that comes up, anytime someone says you gotta be practical, right? You can't just go out and do this. Those people lose. And right now we can't afford to lose. We can't afford to be practical. So,
please help me understand what kill Wall Street means.
It means exactly what it says. It means that Wall Street
there's no trading that goes on.
Wall Street's insolvent. It's a Ponzi scheme. There's nothing there. All your pensions, everything that we have invested in the markets, it's gone. It doesn't exist anymore.
There's no value left there's no value left in the economy of this country?
Not in Wall Street. Zero. It's a titanic cancer. There's no way you're going to save it. There's no way you're going to want to save it, right? That's an important point, and the only reason that we can do this is because of NWAPA and the credit system. Because what we can do in this nation, by canceling this global monetary system, we can put the credit immediately, like Roosevelt did with the New Deal, into massive interest, thermonuclear development for a future technology of energy. We can get millions of people working within months and tie the value of our currency, to tie the value of our pensions to this new future that we must create now. That is the only way. You cannot survive within the Wall Street system anymore. We have to break through into a completely new paradigm of an economy, which means allowing them to just disintegrate.
If you look at Wall Street, what is Wall Street? It's really a parasitic operation where they extract, like the mob does when they go around business to business, extract a piece of flesh and don't contribute anything. How we'll kill Wall Street is now these guys that Holder says we can't put in jail because the financial system's too fragile. Glass-Steagall will let us do that. In and of itself will kill Wall Street if we just obey the law.
Well, I understand, but I don't understand the idea. I just don't understand how you kill Wall Street, how you kill trading, how you kill any kind of value in the economy, in the businesses, in the.
There isn't any value anymore. It's all fictitious.
Value is what somebody's going to pay for it.
No, it's not. That's the monetary theory that we started with. That doesn't.
I understand the basic thing that you talk about, the value in human creativity.
And Wall Street is dedicated to extinguish that. Everything Wall Street's done, especially in the last 50 years.
Wall Street is what? The traders?
Wall Street is an operation run by the British monarchy and the British Empire that is used to destroy the greatest industrial superpower in the world and turn us into a complete third world junk heap that's on the verge of complete implosion. That's what it's 50, 60 years. We've stopped the investment in real value. We've gotten rid of the blue-collar worker. Look, it's not just in question what we produce. One of the crises we have now is what's the average age of a person who has real skill? 60, 70, 80 years old, right? People of my age and younger, nothing. Now, just the fact that you don't have a skilled labor force of people that know how to build things, that in itself spells out impending doom.
That's progressive education. That's the progressive.
This progressive stuff, I can tell you, this is another thing people got to stop doing. Quit talking about Republicans, Democrats, progressives, liberals, and conservatives. These are all labels that mean nothing. Nothing. If you go back to labels, that doesn't work anymore. Democrats are not Democrats. There's no Democratic Party. There's no Republican Party. What you have right now, we're redefining the battle lines. Either you're for saving the nation, a credit system for development, which means letting the entire financial system go through bankruptcy reorganization, means killing them off, getting rid of this. Or if you think you have something in this system that we have now, that's the issue. And right now, Wall Street's bribing people, but they're never going to pay because they're finished. They're through. They are not going to be around much longer, period.
So what do you do with your portfolio, your stock portfolio? It all goes away?
The only thing you can do, it will go, it's already gone. It's already gone. It's gone. What you can do, though, is by getting Glass-Steagall and use a credit system to launch NWAPA, you could tie your future to a totally different type of economy. We can actually tie our future to a thermonuclear, water projects, infrastructure, right? A totally new kind of New Deal for the country.
How do I do that when I have no money?
You have to win the fight for Glass-Steagall right now and fight for this credit system, which means you have to master the understanding of it, and you have to go and mobilize people on it. Because I'm telling you, the financial system is the Titanic. You could try to hold on to it. You could try to bail your own room out of the Titanic, but it's not going to be successful. You have to, I totally understand, it's a hard thing to grasp because anytime you think about all of your life, municipal workers in Detroit, they paid into those pension programs. They opted out of Social Security because they had the pensions through the municipalities. And now, overnight, they're hit with a $250 million cancellation fee because they had a deal where they were being sold junk, they were being looted. And now the pensioners are getting pennies on the dollar. So the speculators, the creditors get 85 cents on the dollar. Right? That's where the sequestration cuts from Obama. Tens of thousands of seniors were cut off chemotherapy. The date that he warned that the Bush administration was going to have to go for a Reichstag fire incident was before Bush was even inaugurated, January 3rd or 2nd. Right? This is at the end of the Y2K bubble, where we knew there was going to be a major blowout of the financial system because the Y2K bubble was finished. Right? It happened. Not exactly what we had anticipated, but September 11th happened. Just like the Reichstag fire was burnt by the Nazi Party and blamed on communist terrorists to justify in the minds of the citizens dictatorial measures. And that's exactly what's happened. Both Bush and Obama are complicit in the 9/11 cover-up of the British-Saudi role that carried this thing out. And the British Saudis right now are orchestrating a new war between the U.S. and Russia, using Egypt and Syria as the cockpit right now. And they're doing everything they possibly can to stop the Glass-Steagall bill from being implemented, because they know what it means. It's not just their doom. They know, some of them even know that they're doomed. They just want to make sure they take all the nations down with them. We can win right now. That's why Wall Street sent 80 bankers to Atlanta to stop the Conference of Legislators from pushing this through. But we have to get it in our gut on this. And that's why I'm being somewhat hard on this. Because if we falter and take a marketing approach, a more pragmatic approach, we're going to get our rear ends whooped. It's only by being explicit that we have to get rid of this evil beast, the Wall Street system that gave us credit derivatives, that launders drug money, that finances terrorism, that has destroyed the industrial economy deliberately to make us dependent upon them. We have to get rid of this. And only if we have the courage to do that and to push this policy of Glass-Steagall with a credit system and to walk it through right now. That's the only chance that we have.
Eric, the one thing that's already on the books is the 2008 Dodd-Frank bill. And it's for alien.
Right.
So the Congress passed it, the president signed it. They can go in, the next bank that fails and declares bankruptcy, and will probably take some of the other banks with them, instead of getting a bailout, they're going to get a bail-in, which means they will go into our accounts, they will rob our checking, our savings, our investments from our account, our retirement. And then tell them about the super priority of that. You're the one that hit me to it, so.
Well, there's the super priority of derivatives in bankruptcy of a bank is just that the derivatives get paid first.
Yeah.
And so if you know all about derivatives, you know there's not enough money in the whole world to pay off these financial instruments that they create. Not into the financial mortgage crisis, and many of you studied that. You know how they would stand up, $400,000 worth of mortgage and create $1 million derivative, and they'd take that profit out of there, stick it in their pocket, and that's, it's a big financial morass. Now, the thing I'd point to you is if we quit doing the bailout, we quit doing quantitative easing, and if we had did the separation, they would collapse on their own. We're propping them up with what we're allowing them to do on the backs of us. We have this financial system, it's operating not in accordance with the general welfare. And we need to go back to say, what is in the general welfare of everybody in this country? And it's not supporting Wall Street. Wall Street's a big Ponzi scheme. I work for a private investment bank. We used to have a jet plane. We'd fly around with a guy who had 300 flag bearers. We'd go pick a stock. We'd come back. He'd tout that stock up. We'd write it up, and then you get off. There's no free market that these people try to talk to about. It's always somebody the house always wins. It's a parasitic operation. The underlying bad assets that are there won't go away when Wall Street leaves. Glass-Steagall and the American credit system will provide a way by which things that are in accordance with the general welfare can be taken care of with government credit.
One thing that may make it a little less scary is the point LaRouche brought up a couple of days ago, is that when Glass-Steagall goes through, the cost of living collapses. Meaning the prices of stuff, what's keeping the prices, what is driving up our cost of living? It's this beast.
Speculating on
So, that's one thing to think about.
Wall Street is taking their pound of flesh on commodities and all this other stuff. They just got trying to invest with.
So, even if you lose everything, you could still make cost of living is going to be the price of everything are insane.
I just like to add one thing here, and what we'd like to talk to you about is we need your support in pushing for Glass-Steagall and joining together and bringing in your friends and educating. This, like we've seen today, this is not an easy sell. People have their little. I just talked to a guy who said, it's one of the large organizations around. He says, I've tried to help people. I've done the legal stuff. I've done all that. I'm just going to help myself. And he's saying, essentially, I'm going to find a hole, dig in there, and crawl into that hole and pull my family in with me. And that's not going to work. We have to do things where the thing is, our government has accordance with the general welfare forever. Look at the Monsanto laws and everything they passed. We need to get back to the basic principles of our country, that Hamiltonian money system. And with that concept, we can together say this, like Eric has said, what's the alternative? Take a look at our food production staff. The banks are doing money laundering and drug money. None of them are going to jail. What's known as that the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank is paid the $1.92 billion for money laundering, drug money,
they call that the cost of living, or the cost of business expense.
So there's all these things that we need to do that. So I'd like you all to try and leave some contact information. You have groups you'd like us to talk to, do whatever we can, because we have to build the momentum. Because if just one or two guys go to these congressmen, you know they're not going to do anything. And
you had Eric showed a map up there, U.S. map showing something about half the state legislatures have passed resolutions supporting the reenactment of Glass-Steagall. Arizona was not one of them. Is it possible that?
Well, we've been talking to Arizona. Arizona at an early that we need to get to Arizona now because this month, the next month is when they prepare whatever we're going to do to get in.
I thought this resolution could be passed in the state legislature. So that might add credibility when we contact individual congressmen from Arizona saying, hey, look, the legislature's passed a resolution in support of this.
What we need your help in getting resolutions in cities. We need to get letters from these legislators, or we get a group of them, or even individually to write a letter. There's many things that we can do, and we'd like you to, if you could leave us your contact information, let us know what you can do and what you'd like to do to help.
Yeah. And don't profile your congressman or senator. We got Barbara Boxer to co-sponsor Glass-Steagall. And you know Barbara Boxer, she's right up there with McCain in her own kind of way. So you can't profile anybody in this period. The period where people will forget about their shticks to fight for something that they see that's universal, that's necessary at this moment in time.
The thing that I think is important is you think, what kind of future do your children have if we continue along the path that we have? Here in Arizona, we're at 25% youth employment. In Greece and these other countries, they're at 60%. That's an indication of a dying and soon-to-be-dead economy. What are we going to do to turn that around? We've got to really retool our whole youth. They don't have a future. They don't have a job. We have, like Swikart, one of his things, he said, we need to have job training. And I'm in there saying, you don't need job training to work at Walmart or McDonald's or be a security guard. And that's where everything is going. We need to do things where we have the machine tool capabilities that know that are dying up. We don't have anybody to teach the machine tool capability, which is the core of any economy. So these are the things we have to address and see what we can do. And see what Wall Street has done is they've taken those jobs and based upon their profit motive and their numbers and calculated and exported. We need to do things where things are done in accordance with the general welfare and what it takes to do this economy. If you look at free trade, I say free trade is another form of slavery. Back during the Revolutionary War and just after it, the British attempted to attack our economy with free trade. A nation ought to be able to protect its population and its productive capacity and not allow another country to attack it with free trade or slaves in another country. These are the things we have to get back to the basic principles of our country, what it was. And I encourage everybody to do the website. There's probably more you can ever comprehend on there, but it's overwhelming what's there. But you have to go back to the thing of, are you for Wall Street or for Glass-Steagall? Those are the kind of questions you're going to have to ask some of these people. And you have to understand what things they're going to come up in opposition to what you're saying, so you can respond in an appropriate way that makes them understand where you're coming from. I don't know what you should finish up here.
I have some of these, the book program of the United States, and it talks about Glass-Steagall, national banking, and the WAPA. Anybody?
Yes.
Eric, I want to say that, I'm just an ordinary person. I just happened to talk to Dennis one day. We were at a meeting together. I am a strong Ron Paul supporter. But he explained Glass-Steagall to me how important it is. And I've been researching it, and I believe that it is the answer. And, you know, like Leslie, she made up this list, she called all of these legislators. She and I went on Shane Krauser together to talk about Glass-Steagall. So it's just, to me, ordinary people, and if I call you ordinary and you're not, please forgive me, but let's say the middle class, the 99%, not the 1%, do something. You know, call it. With the list is here, the telephone numbers are here. Just call them. They need to hear. If they start getting calls from people on a consistent basis, they're going to go on. So that's all I have to say. I really believe in this.
It just takes for evil to evolve, continue, and develop. It just takes a good man to sit and do nothing.
And I'd like to interject another thing. If you don't have something in your lives where you feel is worth dying, this is something that if you don't do anything in life, then it'll be worth dying for it to fight for. So if you have to see, I go back time and time again to my children and grandchildren. If I do nothing, they have no life. You can see, like what I said with the youth unemployment, and that's ever increasing. We have a population that's being miseducated, has no skills.
And you just think, George Washington lost every single battle except for the one that turned the revolution around. And we should make Glass-Steagall the battle that we're going to win to turn the revolution around, because that's what's going to do it.
Wall Street doesn't produce anything, it doesn't create anything, it doesn't really, it really doesn't contribute anything.
It creates negative value, because again, remember, value is taking the creative insight of individuals and taking the fruits of those creative insights and using it for the benefit of man as a whole. Right? That's the real value in economy. It's promoting true creative breakthroughs in science, which is why LaRouche is very clear. We're not going to go with all the off-shelf technologies for the recovery. We're going to be promoting a Manhattan project to get the breakthrough we need in fusion, fog ahead, to a completely new higher energy flux. There's a new high of technology that will take us forward at a much more rapid rate than what the technologies available to us are now. Right? We have to push forward. That people think about. With fusion technology, you're like the most valuable resources of the country, because with a landfill, you have a very high concentration of minerals and other products. And with fusion, you can actually create what they call a fusion torch, where you can take the materials of the landfill and melt it into a plasma and extract the minerals on a molecular level. Right? With fusion, you take what requires, with current technologies, 270 days for us to get from here to Mars. With fusion rockets, it'll take you less than a week. Right? So with fusion, you can effectively desalinate water to turn the ocean water into fresh water. Right? And on top of that, this is the thing that I like the best about it, is fusion throws Newtonian physics out the window. Because what it does, one of the problems that we have is that our science has been brainwashed with this system of empiricism, radical positivism, and Newtonian physics. And with fusion, fusion shows that the laws of entropy, the second law of thermodynamics, is garbage. And we can throw it out and actually demonstrate what the characteristic of the universe truly is, which is a not entropic, a process. It's constantly, our universe is created by its very nature and is constantly developing the higher states of matter, higher states of energy flux density. And the key to that evolutionary upshift in the development of the solar system and of our universe is man's creativity. Man's creativity is one of the most fundamental expressions of that fundamental substance of the universe itself. And I believe that if we can actually teach ourselves and teach our children especially, that they're fundamentally not what they look like, not what their family is, it's in their value, the development of their creative mind and creative insight, and what that can contribute to the development of the universe as a whole, as well as the human species. When we can create a passion for that kind of self-development for a purpose, as opposed to what people are passionate about today, right? That is when man will actually reach a level of adulthood, to where he'll actually have a certain maturity and self-understanding, to where it isn't ever again. So this really, this victory right now has more implications on a deeper historical level, which is something that everybody here is worth taking the time to make those discoveries, to use the materials on the website. We really are on the brink of the greatest renaissance in human history, into a completely new era where oligarchism won't exist anymore. And it's something that everybody here has an opportunity to play a role in making happen.
I have a question for this gentleman here and you also. But first of all, are you aware, is there anybody aware here that Wall Street, the biggest supporters is the elected? They're the biggest players. So what good does it do to contact them? That's my, and then this gentleman here, are you in the market?
Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. But you really need to wake up.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I've been sorry when the big collapse came. I'm very sorry.
Yeah, I really feel.
But that's also, that just puts the exclamation point on it too, because again, as I heard earlier, if the congressman and the senator, really what you're presenting to them, when you say we have to use Glass-Steagall to kill Wall Street right now so the nation can survive, what are they thinking? Well, Wall Street's contributing a lot to my re-election campaign.
That's why I'm saying, just to say kill Wall Street, I'm having trouble understanding what kill Wall Street means.
It means
I
you're
understand
elected
the
official,
process.
that Wall Street is going to be Wall Street. Well,
But,
think of,
but what is Wall Street? What's your way of trading business?
No, the institutions, all of this, the derivatives contracts, the
Yeah.
credit default swaps.
I understand
like
that.
JP Morgan, all the companies that are saying that these are assets on their books that give them the right to do what they're doing. We're going to have to put them in an audit to where they're going to come in and show us what they have, and we're going to find out what they have is real versus what's a bunch of hooey.
But when you go talk to someone else, when I go home and talk to my wife about this, I'm going to have to put it in terms that we can both try to understand. And say kill Wall Street won't mean anything. But when I say to her that this is what Wall Street is, this is what the trading, these are people that traded, all this kind of things, and it's pretty much manipulated, and right now it's overextended, and there's nothing really in there. If we want to get something out of it, it's gone.
But I tell people all the time, I said, look, let's pull the plug on Wall Street.
Instead of what?
Instead of grandma. Let's pull the plug on Wall Street Glass-Steagall instead of grandma. Because that's what it is. Wall Street, again, their policy right now is to bail in and bail out, which will
They want to
murder
take money that I have in there for their good.
and leave you for dead.
Yeah,
That's
now
their
I
policy.
can understand that.
Yeah,
My wife
and
will understand.
therefore, we have to undercut, right, their means to do that. And the way to do that is by reinstoring Glass-Steagall,
Okay.
so that they don't.
That makes sense.
Maybe if you look at it this way, envision Wall Street as a bunch of major casinos.
Yeah.
And they're doing a plague upon the people come through the door, they're fixing
Right.
the slot machines, they're having the pickpockets in there, take the money out of your pocket. They're doing everything, to even rape, rob, plunder, steal you, hold you up, shoot you with a gun. They got a get out of jail free card for Maricopa. And what we want to do is take that get out of jail, we draw this thing, we make it so they can't come over and take it out of whatever you have in your account. And then what happens, we have this line where we can go in, like he says, and audit them, and we'll find out that there's nothing there. They can only exist if they continue to get bailouts and bail-ins. Because, they've created this mountain of paper which has no value. These derivatives, these financial instruments that in and by their definition are meant to be not understood. so that's what we're going to, that's Wall Street. And that's what we're gonna take care of eliminating, and that's it, maybe, does that help?
The analogy of a casino makes some sense. Casino will fail if people don't go in and put their money there.
Right, and
And
casino is just a black hole.
Right.
That, you know, goes to nowhere, doesn't benefit everybody.
Right.
It takes in flesh, you know, it's the typical Shylock, they fix the price of their benefit. On the LIBOR scandal, they fixed the price going up, down, and then they debt farmed Detroit. Now they want to essentially kill those people. Now, I'll tell you this, they wouldn't do, Detroit wouldn't have been possible without a President Obama. You think that the press would allow Bush to do what's being done to Detroit? I don't think so.
I think because the press is bought and paid. Yeah, because it's just all of this again in this label stuff. You know, we have basically devolved into a level of tribalism here. You're the blue tribe, the red tribe, the black tribe. It doesn't mean anything. You have this idea that if my tribe gets in power, then everything will be daisies again. That's just not true. Because again, on the Glass-Steagall bill, the vast majority of the people that have co-sponsored it, I can probably less than a handful of Republicans. And it doesn't make any sense.
How can you explain that? They're the labor union people too.
That paradox in your mind shows that there's something that you're missing. And I can tell you what you're missing is that one element is that Wall Street has owned the Republican Party a lot longer than it's owned the Democratic Party. Right? Now it owns both parties. But there's good people in both parties who, looking at the crisis that we're facing right now, can actually step back and say, okay, forget parties, forget all this stuff. What do we have to do to save the nation? That's all that matters. Now it doesn't matter what you call yourself. If you're not for Glass-Steagall, you're a traitor to the country. Whether you're stupid and that's why you're not for it, you're still a traitor, because the effect of not fighting for Glass-Steagall is the destruction of the nation. And we've got to stick to our guns on it. Just like when you go to war, if you're in battle, you can't let any slop take place in your platoon. You got to make sure that everybody's on board and they're clear, because if they don't pony up and take responsibility and straighten up, they're endangering the entire platoon. People who don't fight right now with everything they have to get Glass-Steagall through, they're endangering the survival of civilization right now. And it's only with that kind of truthful fervor and commitment that you'll cut through all the schlock and the mess that's in people's heads that prevents them from being committed to what they should have been committed to their whole life. Because really the problem is that we had a cultural collapse in the 60s with Kennedy's assassination. Everybody got selfish. Everybody said, the whole idea of I'm fighting to make sure the future is better for the next generation, that went out the window. And people started buying rationalizations. Well, if I make a lot of money, well, I'm going to give them. So therefore, you know, that's how I'm going to help. I'm going to make a lot of money, and if I spend money, that helps the economy, right? So that's all I got to do. I got to make money, got to spend it, and I'm going to do my part. You know, and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to the Bahamas, and I'm going to do this. But this kind of sick immorality, these are just lines that the media gave us that we just accepted because they were convenient at the time. And LaRouche, the whole time, is saying it will lead to your destruction. And so right now, it really is behooving to us that we've got to get serious fast, because our ability to succeed is great, but we have to make sure that we seize the moment and we don't lose it.
I think it's critical, and I think John here touched on it, a few other people touched on it. I don't know your name. What is your name?
Leslie.
Leslie. I think that this is a much more positive message is when you present it, not a message that the purpose of Glass-Steagall is to kill Wall Street. That's just completely negative. Emphasize the positive, emphasize the concrete aspects, which I'm sure are probably in this booklet that I just got. The concrete aspects that you talked about in terms of the casino operation, in terms of the speculation, the credit default swaps, and all the things that are not really creating any real value. These are the things that should be emphasized in an approach to any congressperson. The positives, what the benefits are. When people buy something, they don't buy something because of technical details. They buy in for the benefits. How is this going to benefit me?
Emotions play a big role.
But you gotta tell Congress, are you with Wall Street or are you with us? Because if you don't go for Glass-Steagall, you're effectively with Wall Street, and we're gonna vote you, we're gonna kick you the hell out. Regardless of how much money Wall Street gives
That's
you
a
for everything.
confrontational approach, which may not
You
be
have to
the
be
best
confrontational. I'm
result.
telling you, you have to be confrontational. These are cowards. The congressmen are complete cowards if they're not corrupt. And the only way you deal with a coward is you gotta basically smack him on the head and say, wake up, you idiot. If you don't fight for this to save our country, we're gonna whoop your rear end. I'm telling you, in this crisis, the reason that we keep losing battles that lead us deeper and deeper into hell is because we don't get serious and gruff with these congressmen and legislators. I'm telling you, they're in the business of schmoozing and lying to your face. So how do you cut through their BS? And how do you find out if they're serious? You gotta be gruff with these guys if they aren't for Glass-Steagall. You gotta put it on the line for them. Because really what you're doing, you're trying to help them. You're trying to force them to make a decision that they are actually going to not take that big bunch of money that's being promised them, and to actually put themselves in the firing line to save the country.
Well, that's a positive thing. And you don't have to say, kill Wall Street. I think kill Wall Street.
Doesn't mean anything.
You know,
Well, say it in the way that you want to say it.
I'm just ordinary, you know, I'm a 95%. You want to find what's going on with people? Ask me, because I'm 95% of what everybody is. I'm real ordinary. And I'm here because I saw a vision that made sense. Somebody was telling the truth. And there's a path. There's a path that a person can see to something wonderful and marvelous. Okay? We, the LaRouche, you know, the genius of LaRouche, I appreciated the genius to have sorted this out, that there's a path, there is something positive. So many people, you know, oh, no, nothing really positive. There's not a path, a concrete, true path. We have a concrete, true path, and the gateway to this contract, you know, true path is the passage of Glass-Steagall, which disallows everybody reaching into your pockets in one way or another. You know, the dot-com bust, all that has been engineered like a game of musical chairs. They keep taking away the chairs, and then somebody ends up with the stuff. But it's like somebody sat there in the back room and figured it out. Now, I just know somebody did sit there in the back room and, you know, with their little computer and their model and stuff, they figured it out how to do it. And it's done on a systematic basis. Only because they're allowed to gamble with. So, to present Glass-Steagall as a gateway to prohibit, you know, you take the power away from them. You take their ability to systematically rape and pillage you. You take the power away from them. That's what Glass-Steagall does. Now, if that means kill Wall Street, well, in the LaRouche culture, you know, you go with, you say kill Wall Street. I mean, that's shorthand. But the person out there like me is going to say, well, you know, take the power away from them. Yeah. See, that will work for anybody.
You got to terminate. You got to say something besides kill Wall Street, because
that
may be the gist of what you're saying. But
you
for us to understand,
that's what you say to get their attention, and then you can explain it to them.
Well, I don't know. You don't even know who Wall Street is.
That's right.
You know.
But the real positive is exactly what you said. The positive is that wouldn't you like to live in a world where you had a sovereign national bank that is financing large-scale development projects like the WAPA, nuclear power development, and, you know, IES for the whole country that extends under the Bering Strait into Russia, so that you can take an uninterrupted train from Buenos Aires, Argentina, all the way down to Cape Town, South Africa?
That's too far away.
No, that's something that we're going to create right now.
I mean, for somebody to think about it, get
Yeah, no,
involved
I
in
mean,
this.
they thought about the pathway into assure a job-filled creativity. So see, the creativity is what talks to me, because I know that's true. I can always vote on human beings, and when I look at the environmental stuff or the doom and gloom, you know, if we keep doing this, you know, the world's gonna, you know, global warming and all that, you won't have energy and all this and that. No, I always said, well, why is it somebody, and what human beings can come up with? Because every time you come to the end, the sky's falling, all of a sudden somebody, a human being, thinks of something, and you go, woo, into a whole new paradigm. I mean, it happens over and over again if you just look at the history of the world. So you know intuitively that this stuff is true. It's true. There is a pathway into that, but it takes action and commitment and resolve. And you don't have to say kill Wall Street. You can say, let's get a doorway, let's stop the power, hold them accountable, and that all works to stop it. And you'll get people to sign on. You'll get your congressmen and senators because they are visionaries too. They're human beings too. And they wouldn't be there if they didn't have some kind of spark in somewhere when they were a little kid even. They still believe that. They still believe in God bless America. I don't care how.
You gotta find it, but you can find it.
Yeah.
Well, you could look at, the only time Christ ever got angry was when he drove the money changers out of the temple. And what were the money changers doing? They were manipulating these two little currencies and robbing the poor. That's got him a little bit pretty angry. You know, you might say a week or so later, those Annas and Caiaphas were instrumental in his crucifixion, but that's where he got angry, and that's what's really happening with us, is we have allowed these people to get into a position where they, through their actions and manipulations, can rob, steal, and plunder. With Glass-Steagall, we can take that away from them. So that's what, and if that means because you take away, they're eventually going to go away, and maybe you may say going away is for them dying, then, you know, it's going to be something that you have to explain to yourself. You might say, kill Wall Street to me, and this is what it means. I take the power, I make it so that right now they've got to get out of jail card free. I take that card away from them. They're going to jail. When they do something wrong, they get to go to jail. You know, you have that 1.92 billion money laundering thing, and not one banker with the jail. If you did money laundered $5,000, how long do you think you'd be in jail? You know, that's what we have to, you know, however you explain it. But we're essentially taking, like Jennifer's saying, their power away from them, not letting them print money out of thin air and use it for their gain, going back to the constitutional principles where the people control the money supply through their government, and it's done in accordance with the general welfare of everybody, not the profit of these shyster criminal financial institutions.
Where does the Fed fit into this?
It'll be gone.
You know, see that Congress gave away their power to this, to a foreign corporation. And the Fed isn't even an American corporation. They gave away.
JP Morgan and Chase.
Yeah.
You ask yourself, why did the Fed bail out all these foreign banks?
Well, you kind of dismiss the term progressive, but the term progressive constitutes all this stuff about man as a beast, and that you talked about at first, the whole concept of man. That's progressive. That's all that notion is.
Well, progress. I mean, you think?
And you saw that Wilson was a great guy to get all this kind of stuff moving.
Wilson?
Wilson, President Wilson.
Yeah, he was a traitor to the country.
Yeah, that's where all this stuff came from.
Yeah, well, it actually came initially. Actually, Wilson was basically an offshoot of Teddy Roosevelt, who was the first president that changed our allegiance from being anti to pro-British, and that's what said that is motion, because the whole idea of the Federal Reserve and all of this stuff was to effectively take power. But Franklin Roosevelt, who many people say is a part of the progressive, he absolutely was committed to the American system. He was against the British. He was for developing the nation. He did it. He took away a large portion of the power of the Fed to control our economy by creating the Reconstruction Finance Corporation to finance projects like TVA, like the rural electrification, like the Grand Coulee Dam. All these projects that created real value in the economy, which is everything the British had sought to stop. So that's why I say you have to be careful. There's been a lot of brainwashing of us Americans by the British and by like-minded pro-British the blue bloods in the United States. And we have to look at the principle and no longer really focus on labels. What's right? What's truthful? What will benefit the general welfare of the nation and allow us to win this war against the British Empire? Because if we don't, there's a lot of untangling of brainwashing and conditioning that we've got to take place. So when you do that, you don't want to use familiar terms. You want to actually go into a completely new realm to where people can actually think more clearly about it, so the reason is engaged and they're not just reacting to statements or phrases and stuff like that. Because again, a lot of people who watch Fox News is probably the typical, this line that comes out from Rupert Murdoch to brainwash people that you'll never do it because the Senate's run by the Democrats and this kind of garbage. It's just there so you don't fight, because they're afraid if you fight for the principle that you might win. Imagine this situation where it's insolvent along with the banks, the economy's going nowhere good under the system, that moving towards Glass-Steagall and the credit system in the WAPA is pretty good. The bankers who are threatening our congressmen and senators and legislators right now, threatening them and trying to bribe them, they are panicked because they know that we can win this thing because it's ripe. The moment is here. The key is that we have to have the courage of not trying to, we got to tell people the truth. And that's why, again, I'll come back to this, is that you got to tell people what your intention is. Whether they understand all the particulars and the details of it at the beginning, doesn't matter. Because if you say, we're going to kill Wall Street, they say, well, but I like Wall Street. That person's not going to help you. You got to let them know that if we're going to save civilization, that we're waging war, because we're at war. And the blind spot that has got us in so much trouble in this country is we don't realize that the British monarchy and those families have been in full-scale warfare against the United States this entire time.
Since the Revolutionary War.
They carried out September 11th. They're behind the terrorism.
There's probably something you didn't bring up. There's 28 pages of the 9/11 report that were made secret by Bush. And Obama, in his election campaign, said he was going to make it public. But after he's elected, he goes to Saudi Arabia, and you see pictures of him bowing down, and then he refused to make those pages.
And it's on the Saudi family, on their role in 9/11.
The omission report. Omission.
I understand that Lloyd's of London also reports on the Saudi family's involvement in 9/11. So there was a man who's been involved in intelligence, American intelligence somewhere, I don't know, military or whatever, that made that statement.
Well, you have to ask yourself too, who created Saudi Arabia? Who pulls the strings?
The British.
Exactly.
Bedouin tribe in there, and the British say, come on, we'll show you what to do.
They're actually saying that the reason that that the Muslim Brotherhood right now is basically threatening to release documentation that if the United States does not come in and pressure the military to release Morsi and the others, that would actually, they said, bring Obama down, probably Bush, because it basically gets at the cozy relationship the United States has had with the Muslim Brotherhood going way back. So, but it, not to take it off topic, but why isn't the Kennedy file unclassified? Why wasn't Lincoln's assassination unclassified, even to the day? Because it's, or McKinley's, because it's the British. Every American president that was ever killed was killed by the British Empire. And you'll notice that every single one of these presidents had the same policy, the same American system approach. Lincoln, Garfield, McKinley was the last Lincoln Republican, right? And then Kennedy. And in some cases, I won't say Roosevelt was killed, but he was definitely pushed quickly to his grave by a lot of pressure that was being brought to bear by Churchill, because the British could not have Roosevelt still as president in the post-World War II period, because what they feared was his Reconstruction world. And if you want to learn more about that, you can go on our website and look at the video 1932, where we take some of the material from Franklin Roosevelt's son's book, As He Saw It, is the name of the book, where he talks about how he would listen to Churchill and his father fighting at the dinner table, where Churchill would be protesting, saying, you know, we will not give up our favored trading position with our colonies. And FDR says, look, after World War II, the British Empire is over. No more colonies. We're at a point now where we have to help countries develop themselves. Use the American system, help other countries become sovereign, independent nation state, not victims of an empire that's exploiting them for cheap labor and cheap resources. So this was an explicit, open fight between Churchill and FDR. So they,
I mentioned in response to that, Churchill went through gave a speech about the empire of the mind.
yeah,
He was essentially what we've done is they created this empire of the mind that essentially controls us, manipulate us to where they want us to go.
it's all called the special relationship. That's what they convince us that it's in our interest to do these things. And everybody knows the Iraq War. Why did we go to Iraq? Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with September 11th. Right? Even the first Gulf War. When April Gillespie, the American ambassador, told Saddam Hussein, who was an ally of ours, that, well, you know, if the Kuwaitis are cross-drilling under the border to steal your oil, that's an internal matter. We don't, that's fine. You know, Kuwait, what, a slave, they have slaves there. You know, I mean, it's Saudi Arabia the same. And then Margaret Thatcher goes and meets with George Herbert Walker Bush. And after this meeting between her and Thatcher, or Thatcher and Bush comes out calling Saddam Hussein the new Hitler. And all of a sudden, we're getting ourselves into this war. All of these things, including Vietnam, which Kennedy was not going to go to Vietnam. MacArthur and Eisenhower both said, never get involved in a land war in Vietnam. And Kennedy listened. Okay. Kennedy wasn't going to go. So, you know, the videos, like I said, the documentaries on our website, there's a section on documentaries. Worth it, because that'll give you the history on all this to really grasp it, because the war is between us and the British imperialists, the British Empire. And that's something that is right now in full-throated war. And they're behind what's going on in Syria, they're behind the Muslim Brotherhood, they're behind Wall Street, and their intention is to destroy this nation so they can reduce the population. We're trying to make sure that we defeat them, and we can, with your help. So, I think we have to cut now.
We have to get going. To keep in touch and
call your congressman and your legislators.
This battle, leave your contact information with Tommy there. You got
yes, I do. I have email addresses and phone numbers.
Okay, let's see. Let us know what you would want so we can let you know when we're going to go do a